You know that feeling when you reach into like the very back of the vegetable drawer in your fridge and your hand brushes against something that used to be a bag of spinach?
Oh, yeah. The slime.
Right. It's turned into this dark, gelatinous green slime, and your immediate instinct is just pure repulsion. You just want to get it into the trash can outside as fast as humanly possible
Exactly.
because it smells terrible, it's gross, and, well, as far as we're concerned, it's just a complete failure. Like, it's the end of the line for that spinach.
Yeah, I mean, it represents a failure of preservation, which is something we spend a massive amount of our modern lives fighting against.
You really do.
We refrigerate our food, we vacuum seal it, pump things full of chemical preservatives, all because we view decay as the ultimate enemy. We basically want the physical world to stay exactly as it is, just, suspended in time.
Yeah, suspended in time. But today we are taking a deep dive into a deeply philosophical essay. It's a text titled 25. Decomposition, the Nourishment for New Life.
It's a fascinating piece.
It really is. And our mission today is to basically follow the incredible intellectual journey that this author lays out for you. Because honestly, the text completely flips the script on how we view rot.
It completely upends it.
Right. It takes this mundane, slightly disgusting biological reality and it scales it all the way up to explain like the evolution of human history and ultimately the grand design of the cosmos itself.
I mean, it is a masterclass in challenging your own perspective. The author is essentially demanding that you separate your visceral, emotional reaction to decay from the objective reality of what is actually happening.
Yeah.
It asks you to look past the gross factor, and to recognize the underlying invisible mechanics that make existence possible.
Right, so let's start exactly where the text starts, which is with a fallen apple. The author paints this very simple, very clear picture. Imagine an apple drops from a branch and hits the ground. At first, it just rots. It gets mushy, the skin breaks down, time passes, and it hollows out until there is nothing left but an empty shell. And then eventually, even that shell completely vanishes into the dirt.
Just gone.
Exactly. And the text then poses this really profound question. Where has the entire apple gone?
Which is funny because the instinctive everyday answer is just to say, well, it's gone, it disappeared.
Right, it just doesn't exist anymore.
But the text is incredibly precise with its language here.
Yeah.
The apple hasn't vanished into a void.
Yeah.
It has decomposed.
Yeah.
And the author makes a critical distinction right out of the gate between mere decay or putrefaction, which it admits is aesthetically undesirable, and decomposition.
Okay, let's unpack this, because that distinction between decay and decomposition really is the hinge for everything else this author argues.
It absolutely is.
When I was reading this part, I tried to map it onto how we treat our technology. Like if I drag a file to the trash bin on my desktop and click empty, I think of it like decay. The file is just gone forever, erased from existence.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But what the text is describing, true decomposition, is more like taking an obsolete, broken-down computer and physically melting down the motherboard. You extract the gold, the copper, the silicon, and then you use those exact same raw materials to build a brand new, vastly superior machine.
Oh, wow. I love that analogy.
Thanks. It just helped me wrap my head around it. The old computer didn't disappear. Its matter was just converted.
Right, and what's fascinating here is that the author would agree entirely with your computer recycling metaphor, but they apply it to the literal building blocks of life.
Right.
Taking that old motherboard and extracting the gold is a perfect parallel to extracting, say, nitrogen and carbon from the apple.
Yeah.
Putrefaction is visually and olfactorily unpleasant to us. We hate the smell.
We really do.
But decomposition itself is the invisible engine of the material world. I mean, the text makes the bold claim that without this specific process of energy conversion, there would be, quote, no such material world.
Wow.
It's not just a cleanup crew. It is the fundamental prerequisite for anything physical to exist.
It's the ultimate mandatory recycling program. And to prove just how essential this is, the author asks you to engage in this vivid thought experiment. They ask you to imagine a world where this rule of decomposition is suddenly suspended.
Just turned off entirely.
Turn it off entirely. Imagine a completely static world. And the imagery the text uses is striking. Imagine if the carcasses of animals remained completely intact for thousands of years.
Oh, God.
Right. Imagine if mountains of piled up garbage never, ever rotted. It would just sit there accumulating completely untouched by time.
I mean, it would be a logistical and spatial nightmare. Every single piece of organic matter that has ever died since the dawn of life on Earth would still be taking up physical space.
Exactly. But then the text mentions fallen leaves. It says, imagine if the leaves fallen from the trees remain as fresh as ever. And I have to admit, I kind of push back on the text here.
Really? Why?
Because, well, a part of me thought, wouldn't an eternally fresh autumn leaf be kind of beautiful?
Oh, I see what you mean.
Right, like if you could walk through a forest floor that was perfectly preserved in vibrant reds and golds, wouldn't that be a stunning sight? Why is the text so insistent that this lack of rot is an absolute disaster?
Visually, sure. A perfectly preserved autumn forest would be beautiful for a moment. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the text is fundamentally about movement. It's about flow.
Okay, flow.
An eternally fresh leaf is actually a blocked system. It is actively hoarding nutrients that it's no longer using.
But isn't a preserved forest better than a rotting, mushy one? I mean, I'm finding it hard to give up on my perfect autumn landscape here.
Think about what makes the forest alive in the first place, though. If that beautiful red leaf doesn't break down, the carbon, the nitrogen, the phosphorus, it's all locked inside it. It cannot return to the soil.
Oh.
And if the soil is depleted because all the nutrients are trapped in dead leaves, the tree cannot sprout new leaves in the spring.
Ah, so it's choking on its own perfection.
Precisely. Without this natural clearing mechanism, the world just becomes a museum of the dead. It's a closed loop where all the energy gets trapped in static, unmoving forms.
Wow.
The world would literally choke on its own history, completely unable to support any new life because the building blocks are all locked up in the past.
Okay, that clicks for me now. So eternal garbage and unrotting carcasses would physically destroy the environment by hoarding space and resources.
Exactly.
And if physical flow is that critical, it makes sense that the author then applies this to the flow of human ideas. Because honestly, the text takes a massive conceptual leap here.
It really does. It's quite the jump.
We go from physical trash and rotting apples straight into the realm of human institutions.
It is a breathtaking pivot. I mean, the text moves seamlessly from the microscopic mechanics of soil to the macro-level sweep of human civilization.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the text starts listing off specific societal structures that it claims must corrupt and decompose, just like the apple.
Yes.
It specifically points out slave societies, the feudal system, despotism, original religion, and ancient civilizations. The author argues that if these systems didn't corrupt and break down, we could not possibly have today's civilized society.
Think about how radical that framing is. Normally, when we study history, we look at the fall of ancient civilizations or the collapse of empires as, well, historical tragedies.
Right. It's always framed as a failure. We say things like Rome fell because they made these specific political or economic mistakes.
Exactly. We tend to view historical progression as a bloody war of competing ideologies, where the good ones hopefully win and the bad ones are just tragic missteps.
Yeah.
But this text strips all that moral tragedy away. It treats the collapse of despotism and feudalism just like the rotting apple. It is a biological imperative for a healthy world.
So the collapse of an empire isn't a tragic mistake. It's a giant composting process.
That's one way to put it, yeah.
That is such a wild, almost comforting way to look at human history. It implies that these oppressive systems, like absolute despotism, weren't just glitches in the matrix. They were stages that had to run their course, break down, and be recycled.
It really removes the immediate moral judgment from the collapse itself. The text isn't saying these systems were good or just, any more than the putrefaction of the apple is good to look at or smell.
Right. No one likes the smell of rot.
Exactly. But their corruption and eventual decomposition is a structural necessity for the next phase of human development to emerge. The old societal systems have to release their trapped energy, their trapped human capital, and their trapped resources so that something new can be built.
Okay, I follow the logic. But if decaying empires are the historical equivalent of a rotting apple, how exactly does this happen?
What do you mean?
Well, in biology, you have microorganisms in the soil like fungi, bacteria, that do the dirty work of physically breaking down the dead plants into nutrients. What is the societal equivalent of the bacteria?
Oh, I see.
Are we talking about revolutionaries? Philosophers? What is digesting the past to feed the future?
The text actually provides a very specific, somewhat poetic answer to that. Just as microorganisms decompose biological matter, the text states that ancient religion and civilization are decomposed by the, quote, development of the times.
The development of the times. So time itself, or maybe the march of human progress and changing material conditions, acts as this invisible societal microbe.
Yes. And what it's converting them into isn't physical nutrients like nitrogen.
Right, it's not a physical thing anymore.
The text says that the development of the times decomposes ancient systems and converts them into knowledge and wisdom, and that knowledge and wisdom is then absorbed and utilized by present religion and present civilization.
Okay, I really need a concrete example of that, because it sounds great in theory, but how does an incredibly dark, oppressive system actually turn into wisdom?
It's a fair question.
Like, does the text mean we had to digest the brutal lessons of something like a slave society to create the modern ethics we have today?
That is exactly the mechanism the text is pointing toward. Let's look at the feudal system, which the author actually specifically mentions.
Okay.
Under feudalism, you had absolute monarchies, serfs tied to the land, massive wealth inequality, and incredibly stagnant social mobility. It was a rigid, blocked system.
So the societal equivalent of the eternally fresh autumn leaf hoarding all the nutrients.
Exactly.
Mhm.
But then, the development of the times, things like the Black Death, shifts in agriculture. Early global trade acts as the bacteria. The feudal system begins to rot.
Ah.
Serfdom breaks down because of labor shortages. And as that system corrupts and falls apart, it forces societies to negotiate new terms of labor. It leads directly to early concepts of wage labor, property rights, and eventually documents like the Magna Carta, which limited absolute power.
So the rot of serfdom directly fed the roots of individual rights and early democracy.
Yes.
You literally cannot get the rich topsoil of modern governance without the generations of dead, collapsed autocratic systems that came before it.
The text frames this process with profound optimism. It explicitly states that this cycle, quote, changes waste into valuable materials and turns the corrupted into wonders.
Wow. Turns the corrupted into wonders.
By digesting the failures, the atrocities, and the limitations of the past, the development of the times extracts the specific wisdom needed to build a more advanced civilization. Every legal code, every technological leap, every philosophical breakthrough is built on the compost of whatever system collapsed before it.
It makes you wonder how future historians will view the things we're struggling with right now.
It really does.
But that brings us to the final and definitely the most sweeping conclusion of the source text, because the author looks at this entire mechanism, from the single rotting apple on the ground to the collapse of ancient empires turning into modern legal wisdom, and sees a pattern.
A very deliberate pattern.
Right, a pattern that they believe is simply too perfect to be an accident.
The author zooms out to the widest possible lens here.
Right. The text poses this awestruck rhetorical question. It points out how flawlessly efficient this life and death cycle is. Nothing is ever truly wasted. Everything is just converted. And it asks, who is capable of such considerate and flawless thinking? Who could design a completely closed-loop system where waste becomes valuable material and the corrupted turns into wonders?
It is actively seeking the architect of the system.
And it provides its own definitive answer. The text concludes with 3 words, the greatest creator, and it also refers to this architect as God.
Yes, it does.
So what does this all mean? I mean, think about the journey we just took. We started with a gross, mushy apple on the dirt, and we ended at a theological proof for a higher power.
Quite the leap.
But I have to push back here.
Oh, sure.
My mind immediately goes to the scientific perspective. Someone could easily read this text and say, wait a minute, this isn't proof of a divine architect. This is just the first law of thermodynamics.
Right. Matter and energy cannot be created or destroyed.
Exactly, only transformed. You could argue that evolutionary biology and physics force efficiency out of pure necessity, not out of considerate design. Why does the author make this massive leap to a greatest creator?
This raises an important question about the philosophical tradition the author is stepping into. What you're pointing out is the classic tension between naturalistic explanations, like thermodynamics, and teleological explanations, which argue that design implies a designer.
Okay.
The author is presenting a very specific variation of the argument from design.
But usually when people argue for intelligent design, they point to things that look beautiful and orderly, like the sheer complexity of the human eye or the precise orbit of the planets. They point to the pristine things.
Exactly, and that is what makes this text so highly unusual. This author looks at rot, corruption, the smell of decay, and the violent collapse of human civilizations and says, look at how perfectly efficient this destruction is.
It's so counterintuitive.
It really is. The author analyzes the closed-loop nature of the universe, the fact that absolutely nothing is permanently discarded, and deduces that such a considerate, flawless recycling system necessitates an intelligence behind it.
So the lack of waste is the proof.
To the author, the sheer lack of permanent waste isn't just a physical law. It is the ultimate signature of a greatest creator.
It's a completely different way of looking for the divine, not in the pristine, eternal things, but in the muddy, messy, constant churning of breakdown and rebirth.
Yeah.
It reframes the very concept of death and decay. Instead of viewing rot as a flaw in the universe, it's presented as the most brilliant, compassionate feature of the design.
It's a profound paradigm shift. And we should be clear, we aren't here to validate or invalidate the theological conclusion the author reaches.
Of course not.
The value of the text is in the underlying logic it presents. Whether you view this closed-loop system as the product of divine architecture or just the inevitable result of blind thermodynamics, the text demands that you stop viewing endings as tragedies. The dissolution of an object or an idea or an institution is simply the required mechanism by which the future is fed.
It really does make you pause and rethink the things you encounter in your daily life, just to bring all these threads together for you as you're listening. We started by looking at the biological reality of a rotting apple, understanding that it isn't vanishing, it is actively converting its energy.
Mm-hmm.
Then we scaled up to the terrifying thought experiment of a static world, realizing that without decay, the Earth would choke on its own physical history.
Which led us to the text's surprising realization that societal structures, like feudalism and despotism, must also rot and collapse.
Yes.
The development of the times acts as the microbe, breaking down the rigid systems of the past into the adaptable knowledge and wisdom that fertilizes our present civilization.
And finally, tracing all of this flawless, waste-free recycling up to the author's philosophical concept of a greatest creator orchestrating the entire closed-loop system. It's a massive amount of conceptual ground to cover.
It really is.
But the immediate practical takeaway for you is this. The next time you encounter something decaying, whether it's literally a forgotten piece of fruit going soft on your kitchen counter, or an outdated societal norm that you are watching break down in real time on the news, don't view it as an ending,
Don't panic.
right? Don't let your immediate instinct be repulsion or despair. Try to recognize it for what it functionally is. It's a necessary transfer of energy. The old making space and providing the vital nutrients for the new.
It's strangely comforting, It suggests that in the grand scheme of things, nothing is ever truly lost. It is only ever waiting to be reborn.
It is comforting. But as we wrap up, it also leaves me with one final, slightly unsettling thought to mull over. We've talked a lot about the past.
Right.
But if the text is right, if biological matter, original religions, and ancient civilizations absolutely must decompose to nourish the future, then what currently thriving, deeply cherished institution or belief of our modern civilization is destined to become the rotting apple?
Oh, that's a good question.
What are we fiercely protecting and building right now that is quietly meant to be nothing more than fertilizer for an entirely unimaginable future society?